given who they were, given who they were, and that magic was their brag. Given all the evidence for preparations that were made and the way the system played out, I don't think the rational question really is, how could you believe the notion that media faked Lenin's death and reported it as death, but pulled him out? The real question is, how could they resist? The idea for fourth dimensional manipulation of media landed on the desks of every studio mogul, every great dictator who was around in the 1920s, every artist. Houdini was around, Ouspensky was around, fourth dimensional psychologists working in the year before Einstein's theory of relativity had a different notion of fourth dimensions. The cubist idea was applied to cinema by Blaise Sanders, which is the name he adopted. It means blaze from the cinders, or phoenix. Lazarus is the name they used. The walrus, Casper, all have similar connotations. And it landed on their desks in the 1920s. You're talking about Diaghilev, D'Annunzio, Luigi Freddi, D.W. Griffith, Mussolini, Ouspensky, Blaise Sanders, Sergei Eisenstein, Walt Disney, Griffith, and then it disappeared. Where did it go? It went into the background of their movies because they took it into the room behind the revolving bookshelf. They adopted it as where it went. And they needed Lenin to play his role. And they used me like Woody Allen movie, like Zelig. The idea that I was on hand the day that Reagan claims he was shot and was given evidence that it was fake, that's kept out of the news. But there's this Woody Allen little kid who shows up at John Lennon's assassination by virtue of a script. He shows up when Reagan claims he was shot. He comes out and waves to him, gives him a brochure. There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. And they splice it out of the background of CBS News, who has it on camera, that I was there. Because Woody Allen, Maya Farrow, Frank Sinatra, John Lennon, and Reagan were in on it. And it's in the cinema of Japan. It's in the cinema of Germany. It's all background. I see it because I use closed captions because I'm deaf, so the words are superimposed on the imagery. They stayed. I also received the Texas school book and read it when I was a child. It was part of my formative passage to learning. They put it in a place called Pitt. Where else would they put it? When I was abducted by the pitmen, hitmen, quarrymen, tortured. Quarrymen was the Beatles' first band. The Beatles were named by Adolf Hitler for his VW, the Beetle. So thou shalt not pass is the spirit of Lenin in the fourth dimension, controlling the issue. And of course, Putin knew about it. He promoted Yoko Ono to symbolism of third place in the Beijing Olympics, while his skater signaled the fourth dimensional psychology of the hidden IMAM program that was agreed upon by Trump and Toon. And Biden had his hand in all of it. He followed the Texas school book. The Texas school book superimposed films like The Killers, the plan to kill Kennedy, one of the major themes of the super story in Italian, German, Japanese, French, American, British. It's in all the background of all of these cinemas. Was the theme of killing Kennedy over Hiroshima. They had two virgins, pussy ball, clocked to the AIDS attack. And they played a game of be like John Lennon, who was exhibitionist with his wife Yoko Ono. How can you say we don't have the right to peep on you? There was a sociology class and somebody said, it's none of anybody's business who I sleep with. And that may be legally true, but Shifty just rolled his eyes. I mean, people have the power to peep, they're going to peep. They don't believe in dignities unless you abide by the marriage principle. And that's the home economics issue in the climate change club. So you really see back in the days of Gorbachev and the Iran-Contra scam and the 444-day experience park of hostages in Iran, what Foucault was up to when Salman Rushdie and the Russian leader with the splotch, the stigmata, were meaning to say symbolically. And of course, the women went along with this for reasons. I don't know how they think or why they think the way they do. But the obsession with virginity is clear. They have it set up for me. I've been alone for 30 years, and if I wanted to get out of that, it's like Noam Chomsky likes to say, try it. See what we do. Yoko Ono got her revenge by putting me to the firing squad of an AIDS injection needle, just like the movie Audition has a woman with a syringe. This sadism is not make pretend. It's real. Lenin was a psychopath. And they say in the left-wing books that anti-fascism has to be armed like the Black Panthers. Well, it turns out the Black Panthers were allies of Reagan's war game. They came to Pittsburgh, and just as they set up The Killers with Reagan, it's a movie that doubled the events that they used to kill JFK. So the CinemaScope was a parallel in the Ouspensky fourth dimensional universe. They did the same thing with the film that I show. It's the Telltale clip. That's Two Virgins Pussy Ball at the University of Pittsburgh. They put Lady Panther on it, Dixon. I mean, they made no attempt to hide their imperial pussy ball game. And it was based on the idea that adultery is forbidden. It's one of the 10 Commandments. And as usual, their Woody Allen figure was kept in the dark that the girl who seduced him was even married. I mean, that's the principle that they use. It's a dummy. They take a deaf guy and they make him a dummy. And go ahead and try to convince somebody, queer ball. They're obsessed with virginity. They play rape tree games. One of these crowd from Carnegie Mellon University was from the Society of Military Engineers. And he had this cat that would run in a circle. It was the cutest thing, but it would pee on you all the time. It's a kitten who was mauled. And Ming Na Wen has done her level best to browbeat anybody to understand what was done to me, but that kitten was meant to symbolize me. They had kidnapped and tortured me and made clear to me that I would be killed if I didn't perform for them, as Pope Carl put it. So created a reaction formation. You got to get in to get out, Pianist Gabriel calls it. Have you come too soon for you? He doesn't want you to wake up. So they use me for a performance and allow me to live. Here's some food. Here's a crust of bread. They say, well, Gaza now. Well, Gaza, I told its people, they met with Foucault. They didn't. But the point is that a lot of the intellectual service this operation. And nobody who's willing to talk about it. It's face saving. I've gotten into academics. I put up the evidence for the four aspects of the super story, which is Kennedy being killed for Hiroshima, two virgins pussy butt clock to the AIDS attack, the escape of Adolf Hitler and Lenin's Houdini. And my point is not how can you believe it, how can you disbelieve it? How could they resist? This was their whole reason to live, was to manipulate reality, to pull a magic show. They even did a trial run, this Paul is dead stuff that some people remember. Back when, which that's the line, famous line. Here's another clue for you all: the walrus is Paul. The walrus was Lenin sitting at a piano. You can verify that magical mystery to it. But what's the point of getting into the hocus pocus when the basic issue is that the theme had been around since the days of Houdini? If you go down to Tacoma, University of Washington, side by side with Immoral Memories, that Sergei Eisenstadt's Eastwood's America. Those two, Eastwood was the one who came up with the idea of doubles dare. We're doubles dare. Double fantasy, get it? You only live twice. The idea resounds again and again in the superstory semiotics. And they're going to try to save face because it's entering into academics now, by courtesy of the person who was worked over and tortured. But what do you think you can see about what's being done in Gaza is resisting them makes them laugh. Yoko Ono is exactly the same way. Resistance to her just makes her laugh. The idea that you're entitled to privacy is a laugh. They were exhibitionists. We're going to come and watch you, queer ball, on your home computer, and everybody's going to see that you like Japanese women. Why don't you ask for one? So that we get over the hurdle of the idea that you were being subjected to successive degradations of the X motive. In Death Camp 7, as Pope Carl and the Fulton Many would put it, they tortured me. And they demoralized me when it comes to sex, and they withheld proper education. So the croquet Gregusta Corona could leer through her Gaza peep at the abortions buried under rubble, while the Zionist war pigs bewail by saying that Hamas did things that they did in Sabra and in the Nakba. Oh, it's a metaphor show between the Ayatollah and Foucault. Because these stupid people actually believe that sex is Satanism and that abortion proves it. And they have the feminazi squads behind them because the way Biden feels about it is he's Catholic. Ruth Ginsburg was the same way. It is murder, but so what? We're pragmatic murderers. Remember when the elevator came down like from the Omen and cut that poor girl Carrie in half? as a goodbye from Ruth Ginsburg right before she died. They don't care. And so this is a central issue in sex education in public schools is home economics is in the battle plan to save and reconcile Western society from becoming the decadent experience park that Hitler's minions in Britain used as an alibi for the AIDS attack and so on. If there's anybody out there that from Harvard Medical Journal who believes that sex should be kept safe and it's consensual, then it's only the two business of the two people engaged in it, it's going to get a crucifix stuck up their ass by Bobby Kennedy Jr. at the rape tree on the southern border. Yes, indeed, they are. Because nobody wants to take that line. It's absolutely official. The two virgins push you ball. A second version is punished with that by death by syringe. They how if the Antifa is right, that anti-fascism has to be fought in cooperation with the Black Panthers. Now, how do you explain this guy Wilzel, who was a white supremacist, promoting Joseph Goebbels, being endorsed by the Seattle Black Panthers? Because nobody buys the idea that I hurt any girl. I might have hurt their feelings. I was confused in days and didn't understand why I had self-esteem problems. But the idea that I was hiding something was just the trauma of having been kidnapped and tortured on a snowy day when I was freezing at the age of 12 or 13 years old by the pitmen hitmen, who were murderous people. How does supporting them qualify as Antifa? Because the Black Panthers agree with Goebbels that murderers in prison should be set free because of the inequity in the sentencing or something like this. It doesn't resemble anything that's remotely honest. The alliance of the Black Panthers with Ronald Reagan over the Texas school book, where adultery was used to symbolize by South Africa, the Mandela and the elders, thou shalt not, the Ten Commandments, and the great god of Balrogs who came with the AIDS and threw it at everybody. And it became a logical weapon in their minds. They didn't say, hold up, stop the conversation. This didn't happen the way it's being presented. A one-night stand on campus is not all that unusual. They couldn't bring themselves to say that. Gallaudet couldn't even protect a deaf girl with Down syndrome who was raped by telling Ming No Wen Jimmy Curry was held hostage by people who were behaviorally conditioning him into slavery using a neurohypnotic from Attica State Prison. Why couldn't Gallaudet do that? Well, they'd be dragged kicking and screaming into the issue of Mackenzie Shirilla, for example. They don't want to go that road. They don't want to admit that deafness and neurohypnosis is practiced by the Zionists at the University of Pittsburgh. They say, Arno gets to peep, and she sees that Jimmy likes Japanese girls. And Chomsky says, well, stick him if he tries to go out with one. Get this, I'm 63 years old and they've given me Parkinson's. I drool at lunch. I'm not asking for a girl to stand by me who's beautiful and have being a mother, a single mother, outlive me as a single mother. I'm not asking that. So they have to find some way to make the TikTok war, which has strutting Japanese girls, into proof that I was a ladies' man. And the gods and children under the rubble are the Satanism of Foucault. And therefore, Cornel West can jump down, hold PP, and say, we either stick him or he gives us the money. to be made because Yoko Ono is the sacred victim. Because everybody knows John Lennon died. How could they resist pulling such a stunt when it works for Reagan and Hitler so beautifully? The Society for Military Engineers guy hit a canister of fluorocarbons. They just let him go up in a place called Edwardsville. King Edward was behind this stuff, and they called it Evil. See, the American High Command is full of berserkers and survivalists. And you would think Bobby Kennedy, who would realize that, would go after them. That's part of his platform and campaign. But instead, he signals that he too is a golem and a slave of the worst racist of all, Netanyahu. God will help us for these squishes. You don't dare say a word about what happened. So my point is, don't ask how I could believe that John Lennon was in on what they called two virgins. He himself named two virgins and played out the semiotics and how I won the war. Ask yourself, how could he resist when it was all set up and they pulled it off and it worked beautifully for them?